Welcome back to the new Sentinel. Today we're diving deep into a topic that some folks probably never thought twice about, and that's the Bank for International Settlements, or BIS as it's called in all the dense finance textbooks. Major, you mind giving us a quick lay of the land? Why was this thing created in the first place?
Yeah, sure thing, Chukwuka. So, the BIS was set up right after World War I, back in 1930. The initial idea was pretty strategic. Manage those big German reparations from the Treaty of Versailles. But also, how do I say this? It was kind of built to be above the fray. You've got a bank owned by central banks, not governments. Set up shop in Basel, Switzerland, neutral ground. Think of Basel like a fortified chessboard square nobody controls. Proximity to all the action in Europe, but out of the shooting range, you know?
And that neutrality, or the appearance of it, was also the selling point, right? BIS is supposedly the bank for central banks, so it exists to help stabilize international monetary cooperation. But when you peel back a layer, its special legal protections, immunities from prosecution and all, are about shielding it from external pressure. That makes me wonder, do these powers really help keep it neutral, or just unaccountable?
Exactly, Olga. Immunity sounds official, but you talk to old folks in Lagos or Houston, they'll say it just means nobody can touch them. If you look at the charter, it's full of language about serving all central banks equally, no matter what's going on in the world. But neutrality, man, that's always easier to write in a constitution than to live up to in practice. Maybe, Major, it's a bit like the rules of engagement. You know the letter, but the reality changes when shots are fired.
Right, you nailed it. There's the playbook, and then there's the game. Basel's a symbol. Neutral ground, strategic by design, and everybody's welcome at the table. But neutrality is fragile, especially when you put money and politics in one room. You ever try to referee a poker game between rival squads? It never goes by the book for long.
Neutrality's a loaded word. I'm not buying it, not fully. Any outfit that's immune can tip scales just by blinking. BIS said all the right things, but power behind closed doors is still power. If you want true neutrality, you gotta have outside oversight. Protocols mean squat without teeth. Hell, we've seen that in past ops, right?
It's a fair point, Duke. Early on, BIS looked like just another cog to keep the system oiled and neutral in intent. But we know that even neutral gearboxes can seize up under real pressure. Let's see how that supposed neutrality held up in history.
So, let's go back to March 1939. Nazi Germany had occupied Prague, and just days later, the BIS moved 23 tons of Czechoslovak gold, sitting in London, right into the hands of the Germans. Now the Czech National Bank gave the order, on paper. But in truth, that decision came at gunpoint. This wasn't just paperwork, this was trauma. I've interviewed Czech survivors, some now in their 90s. They remember watching their nation's wealth vanish overnight, then used to fund an invasion that would devastate their lives. The BIS followed orders, yes, but the cost was human suffering on a vast scale.
Yeah, and organizationally, it was a wild time. The BIS board had directors from both Axis and allied countries. Talk about an awkward conference room. Axis reps like Germany's Emil Pool. They pulled a lot of strings. Meanwhile, allied directors were getting pushed out as their countries were occupied or cut off. The BIS kept claiming business as usual because, on paper, they had legal obligations. But when the board gets stacked by aggressors and everybody's in the dark about what's really moving in the vault, secrecy like that, it ain't just bad optics. It's dangerous. It's like a unit ignoring bad orders because they came from the top. I've seen it. Sometimes the moral thing to do is say no, even if it breaks protocol. That's leadership, not just chain of command.
Yeah, Major. That chain of command thing, I get it. In the Army, if the CO's order is off, like seriously off, you don't just salute and look the other way. History judges you. The BIS might have said they were following protocols, but let's not sugarcoat it. Helping Nazis move stolen gold, under whatever rules, just don't pass the gut check. Sometimes neutrality is just a mask for hiding. I'm not saying it's easy when you're surrounded, but you can't build trust if you just follow orders, no matter where they lead.
And the suffering wasn't just numbers on a ledger. While the BIS moved 23 tons for the Nazis, thousands of others lost families, homes, futures. Later, as more looted gold came in from Belgium, Poland, Jewish victims, the institution kept handling it blindly, as their policy said. I even read excerpts from a survivor in Warsaw. She said, "Every ounce carried a story." That's what gets lost in official statements about neutrality and legalese. Real people, real pain. The BIS's survival meant moral red lines were crossed. Was it worth it?
Well, that's the dilemma, right? Legally, BIS was supposed to honor instructions from its members, but laws and ethics part ways in war. You could argue they did the minimum to survive, but you can also say they prioritized the institution over the innocent. It's a question that haunts a lot of organizations even today. Does following the rules excuse turning a blind eye to evil?
If you ask me, no. At some point, you got to pick a side. In the field, if it comes down to doing the right thing or just covering yourself, well, good men do the right thing. That's how you stand tall when history looks back.
But this isn't just a problem for BIS in history. This type of institutional thinking, rules over morality, it creeps up in banking, government, everywhere. Protocol got them through the war, maybe, but it also put a stain on the entire idea of neutrality. People remember. The stories echo on. Let's talk about where those echoes led next. After the war, man, a lot of chickens came home to roost for these folks. 1944, the Bretton Woods Conference tried to shut down the BIS for collaboration. Resolution actually passed, but, like most things, got walked back once the powers realized they still needed the plumbing for international banking. Still, all those skeletons didn't just dissipate. It took more than 50 years, through the Cold War and into the 90s, before things like the Bergier Report and the Swiss and American investigations really forced BIS to open its books. $4 million as a Holocaust restitution fund. I mean, it's a start, but that didn't buy forgiveness for everyone.
No, it didn't, and I'm glad you brought up those investigations, Chukwuka. The facts were damning, even if the numbers, like that 3.7 tons of suspect gold, sounded small compared to the sums moved globally. For survivors, and honestly for anyone who cares about transparency, it reinforced a deep distrust of shadowy international institutions. The BIS eventually opened its archives and admitted, yes, we made mistakes under extreme pressures. But critics, and there are many, argue they never did enough to scrutinize where those assets came from. And modern efforts, like their innovation hub or pushing for CBDCs, don't erase memories. People still wonder, if things get tough again, will the BIS just default to survival mode?
Yeah, growing up between Lagos and Houston, you hear stories. I remember when Tower of Basel hit, folks in my community were nodding. See, even the respectable institutions play dirty. That skepticism didn't pop up in a vacuum. It's seated in stories of secrecy, closed doors, and seeing powerful outsiders get away with what would land the rest of us behind bars. You see global finance today, CBDCs, central bank independence debates. It's no surprise people still have their doubts. Maybe they're right.
It ain't hard to see why. Transparency is tactical. When you lose it, you don't just lose trust, you lose operational edge. Folks stop buying what you're selling. Sure, BIS has cleaned up its act since Basel III and all that, but the old ghosts still shape the playing field. You start seeing parallels. Countries today arguing about who controls digital cash, who sets the rules. And every time the stakes get high, the question comes back. Are institutions going to act for the people or for themselves?
History's a stubborn teacher. The reforms might be real, open archives, stricter asset rules, better oversight. But like y'all said, the reputational wounds linger. We see that echo in how people handle new technologies, or even in international crises. Every time we talk central bank independence or new monetary systems, someone brings up, remember what happened in Basel. Trust is earned slow, lost fast, and as we discussed back in episode 3 on AI and decentralization, oversight and transparency matter more now than ever.
Honestly, I wish more institutions would learn that lesson, real accountability. Because for many, the pain of those scandals, the suffering caused, isn't just history, it's a warning for tomorrow.
Couldn't have put it better. Well, folks, that wraps up our deep dive for today. Next episode, we might just turn the spotlight to another untouchable power. But for now, we want to thank y'all for tuning in and remind everyone that in global finance, like in life, trust is built on action, not just words.
Roger that. Thanks, team. And to all listening, keep your heads on a swivel.
Appreciate the honest talk. Lesson for the field and everywhere else. Question what's behind every protocol.
Stay vigilant, everyone. Empathy and transparency go a long way. Be well.
All right, y'all. This is Chukwuka signing off with the full crew. Catch you on the next Sentinel. Goodbye.